2024-2025 college basketball season is just about a week away now. Can't believe it. And wanted to do a full Big Ten preview here at the Scarlet Faithful podcast. No one better in my eyes than Joe Jackson of Feed the Post, also co-host of Boiler in the Stands, Purdue podcast. Joe, love all your preseason work so far, and thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Always happy to talk Big Ten hoops. I'm happy that the preseason is almost done. I'm glad that there's actual games to break down, even if they're exhibitions. And pretty quick, we're going to get real meaningful games, and I'm very, very excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for Rutgers fans, it's been a long haul in terms of hearing about this team and what to expect. And obviously, preseason projections have been everywhere. Should mention, you and I did a preview for your site, Feed the Post, season preview for Rutgers. So check that out after the St. John's exhibition. You did a really deep dive in terms of breaking down some film, in terms of how Rutgers looked in that game. There's been a lot of kind of, I wouldn't say outrageous, but very a lot of specific takes that people have had with that exhibition, just in terms of concerns they have about this Rutgers team. I kind of looked at it a little differently. We can get into it, but overall, what was your impressions of Rutgers in that exhibition initially?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey are as advertised, right? Like, they're going to be two of the best players in the conference, arguably two of the best players in the country. And that was evident right away. I think another big thing that stood out was like just how important the defense, especially like forcing turnovers, still is going to be. Like, as much as Harper and Bailey are elites and are what they are, like the identity of Rutgers probably is still going to be on the defensive end, a bit forcing turnovers, right? That 22-0 run was a ton of forced turnovers, getting in transition, being able to convert there. So yeah, and then I think like when St. John's did start to come back, that was when like I think St. John's only had a couple turnovers in the second half. If I forget the exact number off the top of my head. But yeah, I think you saw the upside, right? And kind of when I looked at it, and I don't try to overreact too much to exhibitions in general, right? They're exhibitions. I cover Purdue. Purdue lost to Arkansas in the exhibition last year. We see how that turned out. It's not a big deal that they lost. But there's also, I think some things to take away of like, hey, what exactly is the offense if Harper and Bailey aren't just making really tough shots? And there's games that they're just that good that it literally won't matter. And but also like what happens at the 5 spot? Like I think you saw the ceiling of a team that's a top 5, top 10 team, like easily. You also saw, I think, some holes where it's like, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be bad, but it's like, hey, there's some questions that they'll still have to figure out, just like every other Big Ten team this year.
Yeah, great points. I think a big concern from a lot of people going into this season was what the offense will look like. Obviously, Steve Pikiell's teams, as you said, are known for its defense. If you look at efficiency numbers with KenPom and every other analytical site, Rutgers' offense has not been a strong suit in the Steve Pikiell era. And even during the resurgence of this program, they really relied on isolation players like Geo Baker, Ron Harper Jr. in ISO situations to kind of take over. I personally was pretty encouraged by how the offense looked against St. John's. I knew going into it they were going to really have a lot of screening action they've been working on. And you saw a lot, even the two-man game with Harper and Bailey. I guess what stuck out to you in terms of offensive sets that you saw them run and kind of what this offense can be?
Yeah, and so I think they did a good job of some of the sets of, I like the concept, right? Where one of them, and I believe I highlighted it on my video. If not, I definitely did on Twitter, where Ace Bailey would be, essentially he would set a screen, and then he would cut through the paints, and then it's called an exit screen, where he would essentially get a pin into the corner. They ran that a couple times just to get him looks, and now you're getting Ace Bailey moving. If he catches, has an advantage, it's over, right? Like he's just going to get to a really good shot basically every time. You did see some, pick and roll between Harper and Bailey, which I did like as well. Also just some general like horn sets. And so those are, you have two guys, generally the bigs or Bailey and whatever big is in at like the elbow, kind of extended up to the 3-point line area, two guys in the corner, ball at the top. And they just did some good stuff off of that too, of allowing Harper to get downhill, allowing Bailey to pop out for 3, and just different things like that. I think what I will be monitoring, the two things I'll be monitoring is, one, how much do defenses respect Jeremiah Williams and Jermichael Davis as shooters, right? So those like horn sets that I mentioned, there's two guys in the corners. If Harper had the ball, that's generally Davis and Williams in the corners. I wouldn't say they're proven three-point shooters at this point. And so our defense is going to just live with them shooting threes from the corner and sell out on Harper and Bailey. The other thing I'll be looking for is just, and this will come with time because it's going to be a very common theme for basically every team right now, is just the pace at which the sets are run. Like I liked a lot of the concepts. I think at times you saw like the team go through like, okay, we run this part. Okay, this didn't work. Now we run this part. Now we run like instead of it just being like a constant, like a continuous kind of flow. That's not unique to Rutgers. That is, like I said, that's going to be pretty much every single team at this point. Is lots of new faces in the Big Ten, new coaches, new systems. But overall, like I said, I liked what they did. There's definitely just some things I'm hoping to see, change or I guess improve, but not like negative. Like it's not like I thought they were bad, but improve throughout the season.
There certainly was some choppiness, and I think also that had to do with the rotations that they played. I thought you did an awesome job in that second to last possession, I believe, with Dylan Harper turned it over down one. And I looked at that again, and in terms of the way the defense collapsed on him, you were totally right. They had Jermichael Davis, Jeremiah Williams, and Jordan Durkak on the perimeter, and they collapsed on Harper. I don't think that that's going to be the rotation they're going to have down the stretch of games. I think it just also emphasizes the importance of guys like Zach Martini and PJ Hayes. That's the lineup I'm really excited about seeing from an offensive perspective. If they have PJ and Martini out there, natural fits for the baseline corners to spread it out and just two knockdown 3-point shooters. If you can start to mix that in more, Martini was in foul trouble in this game. So that was part of it, I thought. But you saw how defenses are going to react to certain lineups. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Steve Pikiell works different lineups in. I guess in terms of Dylan Harper, what did you think just in terms of his overall game on both ends, but also just there's one thing I think that he will get better at that you didn't see a lot of is him as a facilitator. And getting other guys involved. I thought the ball movement was good at times, wasn't at other times. What do you think his upside is in that regard?
I mean, yeah, the facilitating, and when I watched the high school film, I'm completely bought in on him being a good facilitator. For me, I need to balance like Dylan Harper is a freshman, and so there's going to be fresh mistakes, but he's also like not a normal freshman, and I got to get it through my head sometimes that like these tough plays that he makes, like it's just because he's that good, and you saw some of that of just like, yeah, like there's not many people in the country that can make that play, and Dylan Harper is one of the few that can. What stood out to me, like honestly, was the defense, and I knew he was a good defender, but there were some plays, and part of it is the Rutgers lineups that they can run where it's six, depending on who they play. Like if Jeremiah Williams is in it, he's like what 6'4", it's like 6'4", and then he's the shortest guy. Harper's 6'6", guarding like a 6'1" point guard. Is Harper just could hound these guys and multiple times just force them basically back to the half court line, really get into them. And I was really, really impressed defensively at what he brought. And not like I knew he was going to be solid, but it jumped out of like, oh wow, he could be really, really good on that end as well. You saw the tough shot making, you saw him being able to run the offense, which is great. I think both of those things he's going to have to do. The pairing with Jeremiah Williams will be interesting. Specifically, Jeremiah Williams, I think he's probably going to be a little bit more off ball than what I expected, just because Dylan Harper is that good. So the balance there will be interesting to monitor. But yeah, I mean, Dylan Harper he'll be one of my favorite players to watch in college this year. 6'6", can facilitate, defends. I believe in the jumper at least being solid in college. And then obviously his ability to just get downhill is crazy. You saw that I think it was the first play of the game. He just took somebody straight off the dribble, tough finish at the rim. And like, that's just really, really impressive to do already.
Yeah, he actually did it on Kadari Richmond, who they didn't cover each other too much in the game. But yeah, to do that right off the bat, I mean, obviously his confidence is off the charts, but I know there's been concern, and I wanted to ask you too, before we kind of dive deeper into the Big Ten, was in terms of Ace Bailey, his shot profile, his shot selection. Obviously, he has tremendous confidence in his game and can make it from anywhere, but that could be a detriment at times too. For me, I think the key is Dylan Harper being able to kind of put him in good positions to score and create good offense for him. That's why I was really encouraged by that 2-man game on the screening action. I guess in terms of Ace, what do you think his ceiling is for this year, and just in terms of how the Rutgers offense can evolve with him and utilize what he can offer?
Yeah, I mean, ceiling is one of the best players in college basketball. Like Cooper Flagg, and probably rightfully so, is the freshman that's getting the All-American buzz. But Ace Bailey, like if things break right, he'll be in that convo. And I mean, yeah, you saw some of the shots. Is just like, how are you supposed to defend that? 6'10", super lanky, can rise up. I think with Ace Bailey, like there are going to be games he just wins Rutgers because he makes some ridiculous shots. I'm also like, I'm very, very confident there's going to be a couple just like 4 for 19 type games.
Yeah.
And if Rutgers can win those, then they're in a very good spot. That's just kind of what it is with Ace Bailey, right? Like he can make every tough shot. He's also going to generally take a lot of tough shots. I like what you mentioned with Harper. Like if Harper can get him in spots, Bailey in spots where now he can attack, now he can like just get really good looks, like that's going to be incredibly difficult to stop. But yeah, it can't be overemphasized just how good of a shot maker he is. I think defense is going to be interesting too. You saw Rutgers a lot of times have him as kind of the low man, where he's guarding the opposing, basically whoever's in the corner for the opposing team. And they do that so that way he can be the rim protector or the secondary rim protector, depending on, if Ogbue's in, then maybe. But even then, Ogbue at times was in a hedge, right, against pick and roll. So now he's way out on the perimeter. Monitoring Ace Bailey, just being able to help protect the rim on defense is going to be interesting. But yeah, like I think Rutgers did a good job on offense of getting Bailey good looks. And then Bailey also had his dose of just like, hey, I can make whatever I want. Good luck stopping me. And that's a fun combo to have.
For sure. And you did a great job isolating that part of the defense with Ace Bailey, almost playing his own zone, just staying at the rim, letting his whoever he was defending stay in the corner there. Obviously, you can get burned with that. But I thought with him, you saw the raw potential on defense, positioning, footwork, feel, being able to rotate. Those are all things I think you can be confident he's going to learn. It's just going to take time for this team, I think, to figure things out. But their length on the perimeter, I think that's really where the disruption is going to come from, and just getting teams uncomfortable, getting them to start their offense late in the shot clock, farther away from the rim, and just being able to create those issues where needing a true rim defender, of course, is important, but that's not going to be kind of their focal point like it was in years past with Cliff. Overall, I guess for this team, offense, defense, what do you think kind of the realistic, and we're getting a little deep here in terms of analytics, but from an efficiency standpoint, what do you think fair expectations are for this team from an offense? This is a program that's never been in the top 50, and then versus, defensively, routinely in the top 20.
Yeah, I would expect the offense to take a jump. I would expect the defense to take at least a small step back. I don't know, anywhere in that defensively, probably that 15 to 20 range makes sense with upside. Like there's obvious upside of them just being an elite defense because Steve Pikiell, Ace Bailey is unique, Dylan Harper's unique. Like if it all clicks, they could be a top 5 defense. But I would put probably in that 15 to 20 range. Offense, probably to me, probably the 40 to 60 range feels right off the top of my head, of a good offense, maybe not the most efficient offense. And part of that, I think, is just Rutgers being fine playing a grittier style, fine taking some tougher shots. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, you're going to live with it a bit. You have some shooters. I think the center spot is going to be still probably a question mark for at least a little bit. But that 40 to 60 range, which, looking through Pikiell, his highest ever was 72 on Ken Palm. That 40 to 60 range feels right.
Yeah, and just as a Rutgers fan, if you just look at the raw stat line from that exhibition, I mean, they shot 45% overall. They shot 41% from three and 81% from the foul line. I mean, we'll take it if that could be the average, which is obviously would be put them I think at a pretty close to elite level in the Big Ten. That was encouraging, knowing that the rotations weren't the way they're going to be. They didn't have, I mean, even Dylan and Ace, they weren't at their best in that game. So for them to shoot that as a team, I thought that was super encouraging. Shifting now more to the Big Ten, obviously everyone kind of has Indiana, Purdue, and Illinois in that top three. Wanted to get your thoughts at the top, and if that differs in your mind, and kind of who do you think the favorites are to win the Big Ten this year?
Yeah, I mean, the Big Ten is it is so wide open. Because for me, there's like 5 teams in tier 1, but like tier 2 it's not like there's that much difference. I've kind of taken my stand. I think UCLA wins the Big Ten this year.
Okay.
I love their depth, and the biggest thing I go to with UCLA is like they have 11 to 12 guys that I'm not saying that they're all like starter quality, but there's 11 to 12 guys where it's like if they started, I think it makes sense in my head. Like, okay, yeah, that works. And so in a Big Ten that you go up and down every single team and you can just start poking holes really easily, I think UCLA has the most possible answers of like my example I've been going with is Sky Clark, right? And I think he gets flack for quote unquote like not being a winner, like a winning player or whatever, and stuff like that. There are plenty of scenarios that like UCLA just doesn't need him, and he doesn't make their rotation because they have so many other guys that could step up. Now, he could be a starter, he could be a 6-man. I'm not saying he won't be, but that's kind of where I stick with UCLA. Number one is just like I trust Mick Cronin. I also think Mick Cronin is just he's basically said it. He hated his team last year. He's excited to actually coach again this year. At media day, I think he straight up said he's like, I have better players this year. So he's excited. But yeah, then the next group, Purdue, Indiana, Purdue, Illinois. I'm also lumping Oregon in to that just because like if Oregon, like they're kind of like Rutgers, because I have Rutgers right below Oregon, I think right now. It's just like if the upside hits, it's like, man, they're going to be so good. Maybe the floor isn't quite as high as the other teams, but really good upside there. But yeah, the top's going to be tough. Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, they're going to be competing. Like Illinois is close to Rutgers in terms of just like a lot of new players, a little bit of a younger team at times, going to have to rely on freshmen. If Harper and Bailey didn't go to Rutgers, Yakachonis would be I think unanimous freshman of the year. I trusted him that much, but it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't know if you want to just me to run through the whole Big Ten or if we want to just stop at the top for a second.
Yeah, let's stop at the top for a second because I think Illinois is, scary good offensively. But again, kind of same question marks in terms of defense for them. Rutgers, Illinois, that game could be, that could be in the 90s maybe, which would be fascinating. But I agree with you on UCLA in terms of upside. I think they're what I kind of hope it's not happening, obviously, but having so many freshmen last year be back, and now obviously they're transitioning into a league, but I would love to see what like Rutgers look like next year in year 2 of everyone back. That's kind of what UCLA is. So I think that they added some key transfers also. So I agree with you. I think they could be really, really good. I guess in terms of Purdue and Indiana, obviously Purdue life after Edie, but I think people really kind of, even though they're considered a favorite, people aren't really giving them credit for kind of how versatile they are, I think, in terms of their lineup this year. What is your thoughts as someone that covers Purdue full time? Their chances to kind of win the conference again, and just where you think maybe their challenges will be.
Yeah, Purdue's been a team that I've truthfully had a tough time ranking this offseason. And I guess that goes for the whole Big Ten. I don't have like a legit power ranking just because it hurts my head anytime I try to. But yeah, where I stand with Purdue, and it's my same reasoning for Braden Smith being preseason Big Ten Player of the Year, is just like it's kind of theirs until somebody comes and takes them off, right? Purdue has ran a lot of the Big Ten for at least a couple, back-to-back winning, and even 2 years before that, very competitive up near the top. You go back till like basically the last decade, Painter's only had like one team below 500 in Big Ten play, and that they went 9-11. And that was the where COVID year where it got canceled. Painter just gets he's good. He's one of the best coaches in the country, in my opinion. You have the best returning player in the Big Ten in Braden Smith for sure. I think where I stand with Braden Smith, because it was a big discussion on Twitter, especially when the preseason player of the year came out, is like last year when it was Zach Edey, if you did Zach Edey versus every single other player in the Big Ten and you had to pick one, you're probably still picking Zach Edey. This year, if you're doing that with Braden Smith, you're obviously picking the field, right? But as of right now, I still have Braden Smith as like the highest percent chance, even though it may be a lower percent chance than last year with Edey. The struggles is going to be like, one, what exactly do they do with their lineups? And truthfully, we don't know. Purdue plays, I guess I don't know when this is coming out, but Purdue plays in their exhibition against Creighton. We'll see what their starting lineup is. I've said on the show, like the Purdue show I do, I wouldn't be shocked if that starting lineup is different than day one. This is a team that last year started the same 5 players all 39 games. This year, they're going to have probably 7 to 10 different starting lineups at times. You have your top 3 in Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, TKR solidified. They're going to start. The rest is kind of up in the air. Jakari Harris, incoming freshman, he might start right away. Daniel Jacobson, incoming freshman, he could start right away. Or they go to Will Berg. There's a lot of questions. TKR could play the 5. And what does that look like defensively if that does happen? Like, there's just a lot of questions with the lineup. I think Painter likes that there is a lot of flexibility, though. And it's going to be fun to see him with probably his most athletic team in recent memory, and also like one of his deeper teams potentially in recent memory.
Yeah, I should mention that you were on the panel for the Sleepers media for top 50 players in the Big Ten, and I was fortunate enough to be on there for the Rutgers players, and you had Braden Smith number 1, then Dylan Harper number 2, Ace Bailey number 3. And Greg even asked me, he said, should Dylan be over Braden? And I said, based on, body of work, you have to give it to Braden Smith. But that'll be a fascinating matchup when you see it. Obviously, Harper, a lot of size there. But in terms of, and I agree with you, Painter, without a doubt, one of the best coaches there is. And he's always been super complimentary of Rutgers and Steve Peichel. Indiana, obviously a ton of talent. I think how they line up is going to be interesting. If Woodson, does he space it out? Does he go super big? And I think that's another question I wanted to ask you after about the Big Ten in general. But in terms of Indiana, what do you think? I mean, it's going to be really interesting. I feel like they've been kind of under the radar in terms of they have a really wide range of outcomes despite how much talent they have.
Yeah, they're just another team that's so tough for me because, like, talent-wise, they're arguably the best team in the conference. I think I would put them as just based on raw talent. Like, you go up and down the roster. I am super, super high on Miles Rice. I think he'll be a top 4 point guard in the conference this year. I like Kanan Carlisle as like kind of this secondary off-ball guard, and then Mbako sophomore leap. Ballo is obviously double guy, and Renew is one of the better post players in the conference. You add some depth with Luke Goody. I like their incoming freshman Bryson Tuckett. Like, you just go up and down, and it's like, man, there's talents everywhere. It's how does it fit, and can Mike Woodson get it to fit, right? And that's going to be the question of they're going to have to play Renew and Ballo together at times. When the Ballo news happened, I didn't love it. I hated it, honestly, in terms of fit, but also I understand, like, if you can go get Umar Ballo, like, you kind of just go get Umar Ballo and you figure it out from there. This feels like Woodson has to have a good year or else he's done. Like, they went out and got their guys in the portal this year. He has a deeper roster. He has more talents. It's just putting it together. The 3-point shooting, like, I think at times it is a meme with IU, but it is legit. Like, how many threes are they taking and what kind? I wrote an article about that on my Substack. Like, basically all of their threes are just catch and shoot, standstill threes. There's no movements. Somebody has to get downhill and kick out. Can they add some other stuff into it? It's going to be fascinating to watch. I think that just regardless of the system that's run, their overall talent it puts them in that top tier for me in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree on paper. I mean, they're loaded. I just think it's interesting when, Malik Renault is so talented offensively, and then you go out and get Balo, put him next to him. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if that. You would think you would do things to help facilitate offense through Renault versus getting kind of a space eater next to him. So
Yeah.
I'm really curious how that's going to work. But that kind of leads me to my next point about the Big Ten. And I forget where I saw it, but it's you may have even tweeted this, or you maybe have saw it on social media too, where it's looking like basically half the Big Ten could be going with two bigs at all times. And we've been a ton of discussion about the Big Ten and how much is that modern basketball and does that hurt them in March? But it seems like the conference is almost doubling down this year. And although some of the prominent big men like Edie are no longer there, you're going to see a lot of two big men, two centers on the floor at the same time with several teams, Michigan obviously being an example. I guess, what are your thoughts on that? And I guess in terms of stylistically in the conference, from a Rutgers perspective, I feel like they're actually going to be different than a lot of the rest of the conference this year.
Yeah, Rutgers definitely will be, just because in their best lineup might be Ace Bailey or I guess I don't know if it'd be Bailey or Martini at the quote unquote five, right? And
Right.
just playing this ultra small, not ultra small, but like smaller, no true center, just crazy athletic lineup. Or yeah, IU, Michigan, MSU, Purdue probably will, Ohio State. Like you go up and down, it's just like, oh yeah, there's a lot of teams playing two bigs. My concern is that like a you know, IU obviously has talented bigs, like Michigan has talented bigs, and Michigan I think maybe work the best out of any of them with the two bigs. But like, I don't love the fits for a lot of them, and I don't also love like the talent always. Like I don't think it all fits together always.
Yeah.
Like Ohio State's going to be a team I have my eye on because I think they've gotten a lot of preseason buzz, and they're a team I'm very willing to be wrong. I don't have them rated that high. Just because like I don't see the bigs working together. I'm really worried about spacing, and that's going to be a common thing, right? Maryland is another one where it's like, what does the spacing look like? You have this freshman phenom, another guy who like Derek Queen, like what I forget where he was ranked, but he's right up there, and it's just this is such a loaded freshman class. But Queen and Reese, how does that fit together? Is there a scenario where Queen's just better and Reese, moves more to the bench? It's going to be fascinating to watch, because then there's also like there's going to be teams that play smaller, and it's going to be kind of who blinks first, right? Like say Rutgers plays Michigan, and Rutgers wants to go to their best lineup, which in my opinion will feature Martini and Bailey as the 4-5. Who blinks first in terms of like, hey, Rutgers might be giving some stuff up on the interior, but then on the other ends, good luck Golden and Danny Wolf staying in front of Ace Bailey and helping on Dylan Harper and stuff. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. I think it's going to be at times fun chess matches because of that, and what the coaches are going to have to do, and who's going to, like I said, blink first or just kind of make the change first and give in. But then there's like Rutgers. USC is another team that like just won't play a big at times, and I think it's gonna be fun, because I think quietly like the guards in the Big Ten are probably much better than what they're getting credit for, just because the Big Ten has been so big dominated, and once again teams are going to run a lot of two bigs, but like you go up and down every roster, and you're just like most rosters, pretty much everyone has like some really high level, in my opinion, guard or wing, right? Rutgers obviously features two, but like you really go up and down all. I don't have to do it. And there's a lot of guard talent, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that matches up as well.
I think another thing aside from the coaching chess matches, and the Big Ten's always, the coaching chess matches that you see year after year is just, I think, is so intense compared to other conferences. But in terms of how the league is officiated this year, right? When you have those teams with contrasting styles, because that's really going to, dictate how the flow of the game could go based on, two bigs versus a small team, and which coach has to make a decision based off of that. I guess, how much do you think they'll have to adjust to that kind of style changes or contrast with it feels like it's going to be more contrasting styles this year than in the past?
Yeah, definitely will be an adjustment for them, for coaching staffs, because part of it, I think, is on coaching staffs and teams to understand, like, hey, most games this call that maybe you would have got before, you're just not going to get this year. And it's always interesting to see, like, when you have dominating bigs or good bigs go up against smaller guys in the post, like it honestly just depends. Sometimes I would tend to lean that the smaller guys generally get the benefit of the doubt, especially if they're really small, like or much smaller than the bigs. But like, what exactly goes on there? Purdue's obviously with Edie it's garnered a lot of talk about fouls over the past couple of years. Side note, the only reason I'm happy that Edie's gone is that we in theory don't have to deal with that anymore. But like, there's Painter's been on refs of like, hey, you need to call fouls on bigs like how you would on guards, and vice versa. And so there's been that for a few years, and it's going to be interesting to see because it definitely will dictate games at times. Unfortunately, it will dictate games. And how exactly do they balance, these ultra athletic wings and these skilled guards with these good post players that are all going to at times probably have to guard each other.
Yeah, great points there. And we focus a lot on the top of the conference in terms of projections. And you also touched on how wide open the conference is. I guess, how wide open do you think it is in terms of, is there kind of a clear kind of back tier of the conference? Obviously some teams with new coaches, new personnel, but in terms of kind of how you see the back half of the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, I think like the worst team in the Big Ten is still going to be a pretty good team. Well, probably the second worst. I expect one team to probably end up, 3-17, something like that. Some combo of like, hey, the wheels fall off a bit. Also, they probably just lose every close game. So realistically, one team's going to do that. I couldn't tell you who that's going to be. Like going through the bottom half of the Big Ten, it's some combo, some order of like Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska for me. It might be in that order, top to bottom. But they're also all teams that, like, I don't think you want to play them on the road on a random Wednesday nights. Like they're going to be liable to just have really good games and be competitive. If I'm working under my assumption that one team goes like 3-17 just because all the bad breaks go against them, I wouldn't be shocked if the 17th place team has like 7 or 8 Big Ten wins, and it's just going to be ultra competitive. There's right, like there's the upper tier of like Rutgers, Michigan, Iowa, MSU, Maryland. I think they're all be tournament teams. Rutgers is the one that like I want to kind of lump in the top tier. They're like almost in a tier of their own. But then the bottom half, like you still look at the teams like the other 4 I haven't mentioned, Northwestern, Ohio State, USC, Penn State. I think they're all going to be feisty. I think they're all going to have outside chances of making tournament runs and making the tournaments, and they're going to be completely different styles. And there's a lot of talent there. Ace Baldwin, Brooks Barnheiser. I'm really big on St. Thomas from USC, Bruce Thorne, Ohio State. Like you go up and down and you just quickly can be like, man, like nobody wants to play that team in the regular season, but they're also the 16th best team in the Big Ten. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Obviously, some new coaches are in that mix. Danny Sprinkle at Washington, he just wins wherever he goes. Does that translate to Washington day one? Can Great Osibor translate? Eric Musselman at USC, new coach. Like Jake Diebler, I mean, basically a new coach at Ohio State. I know he finished off the season last year. So it'll be fun to watch. Like I said, I think even if the Big Ten, like, there has to be some last place team in the Big Ten. I just have zero idea who it's actually going to be.
Yeah, it certainly, you could probably run 100 different projections in the computer and get out so many different scenarios. It's also interesting how, in terms of the preseason poll with players, preseason Big Ten players, all Big Ten team, there's a lot of standout players on teams that are projected to be in the back half of the conference. Ace Ball, when you mentioned Brooke Barnsheiser, Dawson Garcia with Minnesota, also in terms of Peyton Sanford with Iowa. So it's good. And then Osibor with Washington. So that's going to be interesting to see too, just in terms of those players' impacts and, can they win games for them that they're not supposed to? But yeah, I mean, the road in the Big Ten is always really tough. But I think this year is going to be even crazier. I think one thing that's going to be interesting, especially when you talk about UCLA and Oregon, is that West Coast, East Coast transition and the travel. that those teams aren't used to, even to the Midwest. And does that take a toll? And do you see those teams maybe running on fumes a little bit in February, dealing even with the cold? I know it sounds crazy, but just things like that, that factors that we haven't, you don't jump to the table right away, but maybe could have an impact. Overall, thoughts on the new Big Ten tournament? It's 15 teams in terms of 3 teams not making it. Any thoughts on the structure? I mean, me personally, I always think the Big Ten tournament's a little bit of, I want to get to the NCAA tournament, and I feel like the results are overblown. But in terms of the format, do you think that has any kind of influence on how teams maybe operate down the stretch, or any impact on the NCAA tournament selection committee? Is it even less now because it's even bigger, kind of unpredictable field?
The bottom, it's going to be, I think, impactful that 3 teams don't make the Big Ten. I also, not that, right, there's no incentive ever to tank in college basketball because it's not like you're getting draft picks for next year or anything like that. So you're always incentivized to win. But like a team like Minnesota, where I don't know if maybe Ben Johnson has bought himself a year after last year and isn't quite on the hot seat, but like Greg Gard, like these guys who are maybe kind of on the hot seat, you don't want to finish and have your end of season meetings be like, yeah, we missed the Big Ten tournament. And so I also wouldn't be shocked if coaches eventually get it back to where it's 18 teams, just for that reason. Yeah, I'm with you. Like the Big Ten tournament itself, it's fun, but it's like, yeah, it's just like a tease. Like I just want to get to March Madness. I mean, maybe Purdue was in a unique spot last year of obviously they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson the year before. It was kind of like Final Four or bust for them this year. But at Media Day this year, Painter was pretty much just like, and I don't have the exact quote, so it's not verbatim, but he was basically just like, the players didn't care about the Big Ten tournament last year. Like they just wanted to get to March Madness. Not that they weren't like trying to win, but they also probably weren't upset when they lost. And so I think that might be a more common theme than we probably realize in the Big Ten tourney, but it'll be fun to at least like have that bottom race. It'll be some good talking points of like, even the teams that are 14th to 18th, like the last day might decide whether they're playing more basketball or not. And then as I'm from Indiana, and so our like high school state tournaments, right? Every team makes it. Like there's always this thought of like, if you just go on a magical run in March, you can win everything. And so I don't like that it takes that away from a couple teams, but also like realistically, the 16th seed is maybe winning 2 games at best, and that's going to be like a great story. They're not probably winning, so it won't actually matter. But I guess it'll be nice that there's fewer games and we can just hopefully get to the March Madness quicker.
Yeah, it's really going to add drama to the regular season too, because the standing shift is going to be more dramatic, I think, just in terms of that many more teams week to week. And also we should mention too that in KenPom, all 18 teams are top 75 going in. Big Ten obviously doesn't get as much respect nationally with a lack of NCAA tournament championship, but also the way a lot of the teams have not advanced to the second weekend in recent years. Overall, just in terms of how you see college basketball as a whole, where do you think you rank the Big Ten going into this season?
Yeah, I think they're probably the 3rd best conference. SEC and Big 12, I think 1, 2 in whatever order you want. It's probably Big 12 number 1. And then it's like those 2 are a tier. Then it's probably Big 10 and Big East in a tier to me, where it's Big East maybe will have a little bit more top end talent, but the worst teams in the Big East are going to be far, far worse than the worst teams in the Big 10. And so there's that trade-off too. That's kind of where I see it. It's like that 3-4 area. I like, in my head, I do expect one team to probably emerge as like a legit top 10 team in the Big Ten, and maybe 2, and then 1 or 2 to really fall. And part of it is just given, like, if you have 18 good teams, that's a lot of opportunities for good wins.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is just a bloodbath and literally everybody's between 12 and 8 and 8 and 12. But in my head, like, just from a number standpoint, it makes more sense for at least one team to go like 15 and 5. And I would assume if you have 15 Big Ten wins, you had a good non-con, that's probably a top 10 team. So I would expect somebody to emerge, but as of right now, yeah, like there's just no clear cut top end talent. Purdue is kind of getting labeled that, but even then it's like, you can quickly poke holes in them too. So it'll be fascinating to see who emerges from that. Like I said, I have zero clue. I don't know who's going to emerge at the bottom either. That's what's going to make the Big Ten so fun this year.
Yeah, it really is completely wide open, and that is a good point about if it gets to 15 wins to win the conference, that's still kind of low in terms of a Power Four conference winning the title with 15. We've seen it before though with this conference, so now with more teams, certainly possible. I guess with the expansion with the 4 more teams now, what do you think is realistic in terms of how many teams will potentially make the NCAA tournament?
Let's see what there was. How many that made it last year? 6, I think.
Yeah, last year was kind of low. I think
Yeah.
the high in recent years was it 9? I think at one point.
That feels right. And so I would guess like 10 feels like the number in my head. Like I could see, especially with specifically, I think there might be a little drop off from team 10 to team 11. I could see 10 making it where it's obviously the top teams that I already mentioned in Rutgers, and then like Michigan, Iowa, MSU, Maryland. I would project them to probably make it. I wouldn't like if teams really are just this good, I wouldn't be shocked at maybe 11 and one team from like the Northwestern, Ohio State, USC, Penn State bunch makes it. Somewhere in that range feels right to me. I guess it's also obviously just going to depend on what the other conferences do. Like if the Big Ten holds up as such an elite conference, like maybe they take a few bids. But yeah, 9. I'll go 9 to 11 feels probably right for this year. With maybe there might not be a team seeded higher than like a 3 seed.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating because it's like if you just finish in that top half of the conference, you're probably on the right side of the bubble. Yep. And all the teams that are on the second half are going to be the wrong, and it could come down to the last week. So I think it's going to be a super exciting season. And then now with the NIT, the way it's restructured, I mean, you could have 15 teams from the Big Ten. Everyone that makes the Big Ten tournament was going to be in the NIT or the NCAA potentially. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, it'll be good for the Big Ten and just keep getting more chances especially on the NCAA side of like just getting a championship. I don't know who tweeted it, but like Purdue, the Big Ten, I believe, has like the most championship losses since 2001 or whatever, when the Big Ten last won. Like they're 0-8 in Big Ten or in NCAA championship games. It's not like Big Ten teams aren't getting there, just not winning the last one. But yeah, that's going to be a lot of Big Ten basketball and a lot of teams in postseason, and we'll see how it goes in future years when I would assume at some points there's more kind of disparity between the top and the bottom. But for a year like this, where there isn't all that much between team number 1 and team number 18, like it's probably going to be a lot of teams playing postseason basketball.
Yeah, and you read my mind in terms of Purdue making the title game last year. It's like I still feel like the Big Ten has that chip on its shoulder that they're not getting the full respect that they should. Even though Purdue gets a ton of respect as a program, it's like they haven't been able to break through as a conference, and I think it's kind of overblown. But from a Rutgers perspective, to end this, and thank you for all your great insight, I guess put you on the spot a little bit. What do you think the ceiling is for this team, and what do you think the floor is? Start with the floor.
Floor is a bubble team where it's they're in that mid part of the Big Ten, and you're hoping that you have enough quality wins to get in. Obviously, their Thanksgiving tournament is going to be massive if they can pick off a win or two in that, because the rest of their non-conference isn't awful. Like I don't think it's like last year's. You have a true road game at Kennesaw State, which would be good. You have Seton Hall, Princeton. Those are always going to be solid games, and then the Thanksgiving tournament is very, very good. But yeah, depending on how the non-conference goes, that bubble-ish area where like maybe they're one of the first teams out, that's like the floor. Ceiling is winning the Big Ten and being a top 2 to 3 seed in the tournaments, right? And I think that's going to be a lot of like, I think they have probably a little bit lower floor than the top tier teams to me, just because I think a few more things can go wrong compared to some of them. But like that's how it's going to be for a lot of teams, like Indiana, Purdue, Illinois, where it's like their floor is squeaking into the tournament. Their ceiling is being one of the best teams, like basically in the country. And I think Rutgers kind of fits into that mold to me.
Yeah, and I think that shows that you can see. I agree with you. And I think you could see a team in the Big Ten that maybe finishes in 7th or 8th place, and they get not the best seed, but they just get hot and they get the right matchups in that first weekend bracket. And you could see a team in the Big Ten that finished 6th, 7th, 8th place that actually maybe makes a run even to the Final Four. It wouldn't be the craziest idea at all.
No, not at all. And that's what's going to make the Big Ten so fun this year. It's just all over the place, but should be good games pretty much everywhere.
All right, Joe Jackson, thank you so much for everything. Feed the Post on YouTube. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you as well on social media?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at JoeJacksonCBB. A lot of film breakdowns. Obviously, I had links to my other stuff. Just general Big Ten college basketball talk. YouTube is Feed the Post. That's going to be more college basketball centric this year, where I'm doing film breakdowns across all of college basketball and my Big Ten content specifically. Although it will be featured some on YouTube, like the Rutgers breakdown. But that's going to be on my Substack, where a lot of Big Ten centric will be there. That's also Feed the Post. So appreciate you having me on. I'm glad I was able to return the favor. Always enjoyed having you on my podcast to preview Rutgers, and always enjoy talking Big Ten hoops with you.
Absolutely. And if you follow me on Twitter, I always retweet Joe's videos on Rutgers. So looking forward to all of those this year. And thanks so much for your time. And can't believe college hoops and Big Ten basketball is here. Oh, last point I wanted to make. Sorry, one more thing, and then I'll let you go. I think your point about non-conference, I think that's going to be so important to set the tone for the conference as a whole in terms of how they're viewed from a national perspective and the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. Thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, that's what has kind of been the Big Ten's calling card, I guess, for the last few years, right? Is they just kind of dominate non-conference play for the most part. And so then when they get all these teams come tournament time, everybody's complaining because, maybe some teams aren't quite as good, but they also, the 4 seed in the Big Ten beat the 4 seed in the ACC early in the year. And things like that are going to be massive for Rutgers. If they can, I know they're not going to play Houston anymore, but if they can beat Bama on a neutral floor, that's massive for them in tournament hopes and Big Ten hopes. And it's also like, I know it's not specifically for fans of individual teams. Like, it's not fun to root for other Big Ten teams, but like during non-conference play, I'm not saying you have to, because it is fun to. I understand it's fun to see other teams that you play against and rivals to not do well, but like from a logistical and tournament standpoint, you want every Big Ten team to dominate non-conference, because that's what's happened in the past, and that's what takes the Big Ten from having 8 teams to 11 teams in the tournament.
Yeah, and I feel like we could just keep talking Big Ten basketball all day, so I'll let you go. But thank you so much for everything. Joe Jackson, Feed the Post. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Scarlet Faithful podcast once again. College hoops almost here. Rutgers basketball fans can't wait, and should be an exciting year. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.